There are some film premises that are so enthralling, many moviegoers will feel obliged to check these pictures out as soon as they hear about them. However, a great horror concept doesn't guarantee a great movie. Terrible acting, jarring shots, amateur cinematography, and bad writing can ruin everything, even if the story had a shred of potential. So with that in mind, I'm Adam, this is What Culture Horror, and here are 10 awful horror movies that threw away brilliant premises. Number 10. Truth or Dare. Paranormal thriller Truth or Dare opens with Olivia and her friends playing the titular game, but little does Olivia know she's taking part in a ritual, tethering a demon called Calyx to everyone who participated. Calyx can take the form of anyone and force Olivia's friends to say or do anything, and if they refuse to play, they die. With a premise like that, the filmmakers could have concocted a plethora of petrifying scenarios, since the players can be forced to confess any unforgivable sin and perform any horrific act. One of the players is even dared to burn a woman alive, showcasing how the game turns innocent people into killers to save their own skin. Sadly, Truth or Dare was a major misfire. Although it has a few issues, the main problem is the villain's design. In human form, Calyx is always depicted with a badly rendered CGI smile, so when Calyx forces the participants to slay each other or themselves, it's impossible to take anything seriously every time the camera cuts to the demon's Joker-like grin. When the smile isn't as pronounced, Truth or Dare looks quite creepy, indicating director Jeff Wadlow shouldn't have bothered with the special effects at all. Removing the digital mouths wouldn't have made Truth or Dare a masterpiece, but it would have stopped it from turning into an unintentional comedy. Number 9. Countdown. Countdown centers around an app that predicts when the user will die, and after a nurse, Quinn, sees how accurate the app is, she freaks out when it calculates she only has 3 days left to live. If that premise tickles your fancy, be warned that Countdown doesn't have much going for it. Rather than relying on slowly building tension, this dud throws in a relentless amount of ineffective jump scares. And thanks to the film's PG-13 rating, the deaths are too tame to frighten anyone. Additionally, many of the kills are caused by victims going out of their way to escape their fate, which would have been a clever idea if it hadn't already been done repeatedly throughout the Final Destination franchise. However, it's the villain that are Countdown's biggest problem. Even though there are many avenues the stories could have gone down, this 2019 picture picks the dumbest of the lot. Basically, the app is run by a demon called Ozin, who kills because he hates humanity. Why Ozin bothered to develop an app to mess with his victims when he could slaughter them anytime he wanted is anyone's guess. Number 8. The Box. Though Richard Kelly made a name for himself with Donnie Darko, his follow-up, Southland Tales, barely received a theatrical release due to its disastrous reception. Despite that, Kelly's third film looked like it could put him back on the map. That would be The Box, which has a simple but immediately mesmerizing premise. In this 2009 film, Norma and Arthur Lewis are trying to deal with their mounting debt when they're suddenly gifted a box with a red button. If the button is pressed within 24 hours, the family will receive $1 million, seemingly fixing their financial troubles. However, pressing the button will also cause someone they don't know to die. Upon hearing that fascinating moral dilemma, a lot of movie fans will want to watch The Box. Sadly, this mystery drama was yet another Richard Kelly blunder, and apart from the scenes involving the button, the rest of the picture is an incoherent clunker. Next to nothing is explained, the performances are underwhelming, and the tension is bogged down by the slow pacing and a series of implausible circumstances. And when aliens are thrown into the mix, viewers are likely to roll their eyes and quickly switch off. Number 7. Spree. It was inevitable that social media horror would become a subgenre of cinema, since tablets, smartphones, and online content rule the modern world, which nicely ties us into black comedy horror Spree. Produced by legendary rapper Drake, Spree follows rideshare driver Kurt Kunkel, who live streams himself killing passengers in the hopes of gaining an online following. As ludicrous as Kurt's plan is, it's not far-fetched in the slightest. After all, criminals committing atrocities for fame is disturbingly common, and social media stars perform acts that are lewd, offensive, or potentially lethal on a daily basis, solely for clicks and clout. So Kurt's deplorable actions are perfectly feasible, which makes the concept all the more unnerving. Sadly, Spree's social commentary never delves deeper than internet addiction is bad, with Kurt's motivations fueled by his need for validation and nothing more, making him an incredibly one-note character, despite Joe Keery's tremendous performance. Number 6. The Purge. One night a year, all crime is legal. With that tagline, The Purge seemed like it couldn't fail. So it's too bad that the first entry in this franchise barely scratched the surface. Instead, the original Purge focuses on a family trying to stop purgers from breaking in. Since our protagonists act like complete morons, it's hard to be on their side, especially when they let the purgers in within a few minutes. Since this story only looks at a single family, the Purge concept isn't relevant for the most part, and if that notion was taken out of the equation, the film would feel like a bog-standard home invasion flick. Despite being a disappointment though, The Purge made bank, allowing it to churn out a myriad of sequels. Thankfully, the follow-ups play with the wider premise pretty well, showing how this barbaric law affects the poor, politicians, and the United States in general. Now granted, not every Purge movie is great, but it is commendable how each of them tries something different. However, looking at those sequels just reaffirms what a waste the first film was. Seriously, why did creator James DeMonaco devise such a magnificent idea if they weren't going to do anything worthwhile with it? Number 5. Frozen. In Frozen, and no, not that one, Joe, Parker, and Dan are enjoying their time at a ski resort when they find themselves trapped on a malfunctioning chairlift. With nobody coming to their aid and a pack of wolves prowling below, the trio needs to make an escape plan before they freeze. Not only is that a great pitch, it's absolutely terrifying, since this man versus nature scenario could happen to literally anyone. So, how did Frozen get so screwed up? Sadly, there are 2 words that can ruin virtually any movie: dumb characters. For example, when Parker leaves her bare hand on a freezing metal bar for hours on end, oblivious to the dangers, it's impossible to root for her. If that sounds dumb, Dan's genius plan is to jump off the ski lift, which causes him to shatter his legs. What did he think was going to happen? The most annoying thing about Frozen is the fact it could have been fixed with a tighter script. Although the wolf chase sequence is nail-biting and the gore is brutal, the experience is ruined by clunky dialogue and the illogical character choices. Now I want to know from you, which horror movie do you think had an incredible premise, but it turned out the movie was absolutely terrible? I'm looking forward to checking them out. And while you're there, you know the usual, give us a like and a subscribe. Alright, now back to the list. Number 4. Shrooms. In Shrooms, Tara and her friends head into the woods, eager to trip out on magic mushrooms. After consuming the psychedelic fungi, the group learn they're being hunted by a deranged serial killer, and due to the shrooms, the group are barely coherent enough to stay alert or fight off their pursuer. Not only that, Tara's troops keep hallucinating, so it's impossible to tell what's real and what isn't. Great idea, but terrible execution. Considering hallucinogenic drugs play a major part in the plot, the film should have been overflowing with kaleidoscopic visuals and distorted camera angles, similar to A Field in England, Climax, or Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Apart from some blurry effects, Shrooms feels no different from a regular slasher. It's worth highlighting that the most generic slasher is better than this tripe, since Shrooms can't even get fundamental filmmaking right. Thanks to the dire cinematography, editing, and continuity, it often feels like a student film. And despite clocking in under 90 minutes, this dreck feels twice as long due to the sluggish pacing and boring characters. Also, Shroom's predictable twist is bound to leave frustrated viewers yelling, "Are you kidding me?" Number 3. Brightburn. Brightburn is a dark superhero flick that explores a common hypothesis in comics. What if Superman turned evil? The movie begins by following the Superman lore to a T. After a loving couple from Kansas discovers a humanoid baby, who they name Brandon, inside an alien spaceship, they decide to adopt him. When Brandon hits puberty though, he develops superpowers, leaving him frustrated and scared. Even though Brightburn feels like a reboot of Superman at first, it slowly turns into a full-blown horror after Brandon's powers kick in. Believing he's superior to humanity, Brandon dons a supervillain costume and murders everyone who wrongs him or stands in his way. This terrifying concept is compounded by the fact this unstoppable extraterrestrial is a confused child who's unable to control his emotions or godlike power. But although Brightburn offers what it promised, it's woefully predictable. And with James Gunn penning the script, fans were probably expecting something more innovative than a super kid lasering everyone to death. Since TV shows like The Boys and Invincible have effectively demonstrated how to explore the darker side of superheroes, Brightburn's wasted potential is now more apparent than ever. Number 2. Fantasy Island. The Fantasy Island TV series takes place on a tropical resort run by the mysterious Mr. Rourke. For some unexplained reason, anyone who visits the island will find their greatest desires come true. Although these fantasies often manifest in unpredictable ways, leading to all sorts of wacky hijinks. Due to how disastrous these wishes turn out, it's no surprise when Fantasy Island was reimagined as a horror movie. Unfortunately, that 2020 picture makes viewers feel like they're trapped in their own living nightmare. One particular problem with Fantasy Island is that the rules of the island keep changing, making it impossible to follow what's going on. As for Mr. Rourke, he repeatedly delivers convoluted exposition, only for it to be contradicted minutes later, making his explanations pointless. Like most horror nowadays, Fantasy Island has more twists than you can shake a stick at, though these revelations come across as obnoxious since they're unnecessarily confusing. Added to all of this, the film is incredibly boring, to the point where viewers would forget it's a horror movie if it wasn't for the excessive jump scares. Finally, the callback to the Fantasy Island TV series in the picture's climax is the final nail in the coffin, since it's so forced and groan-inducing. Number 1. The Happening. Nothing encapsulates M. Night Shyamalan's baffling directing choices more than The Happening. This sci-fi horror is so infamous, it's easy to forget people were once excited for it. And although Shyamalan's work had an unmistakable decline in quality at this point, fans hoped The Happening would put the Sixth Sense director back on track. Firstly, the concept was genuinely compelling, with the story revolving around an unknown enemy that's making humanity kill themselves. Prior to the film's release, The Happening's trailers gave nothing away, so moviegoers had to go to the theater to find out who or what is behind this carnage. As for the mastermind behind The Happening's mass suicides, it turned out to be plants. Now, this concept could still work, as the idea that all plant life has evolved to produce spores that drive mankind to take their own life is chilling, especially since trees, grass, flowers, and houseplants are everywhere. As it only takes one spore to be infected, anyone can fall victim to the plant's wrath, anywhere, anytime. Even though the scenes involving the suicides are unsettling, the film is hampered by unintentionally hilarious moments involving discussions about hot dogs, the ensemble running away from the wind, and Mark Wahlberg talking to a plastic plant. With the excessive close-ups, otherworldly performances, and terrible dialogue in The Happening, it feels like Shyamalan was trying to sabotage his own project.